Hello, my name is Dale and welcome to the 6th Talking Stick Show. I am joined by Suzi Crockford today. Hello, Suzi.
Hi, Dale. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you today?
Very good, thank you.
Lovely, lovely. So we'll start. Suzi, tell the listeners a bit about yourself and what you do and where you're from.
Okay, so what I do is hard to describe in words simply because all of our words have been stolen around this work. Use them most often to describe what I do is that I'm a shamanic healer and a shamanic teacher and a maker of sacred instruments, so typically drums and rattles. I hate to use the word shamanism because it's not our word. So that, but I'm actually I'm getting in at the moment to reclaiming the word witch, which I heard is an incredibly ancient word of these isles. There was once a tribe here in and which by their definition means sacred vessel.
Okay.
So I guess that's giving you a kind of a clue.
It is funny how linguistics can change a lot of things, and even some things get called like shamanism. People call themselves yogis, shamans. After a while, the whole meaning and concept completely changes. So it's like we call the light worker industry, all sorts of things like that. So I totally understand that it's far beyond. It's like an infinite energy in the human linguistics, so to say.
Yeah.
So what got you on?
Calling it shamanism is tricky because the word shaman belongs to the Tungus people of Siberia specifically. It's their word, and through mostly the work of Michael Harner, it's become the kind of acceptable European word for what we all used to have our own words to describe. Our words have become vilified typically. The words that we now have for things like enchantress, seer, sage, witch, all of those things, they've all now got potentially negative connotations, but they once upon a time they very much spoke to wisdom, compassion, healing, connection to all that is, wholeness. We have to use a word taken from someone else's culture, and that's an argument that's very much still raging, but from my point of view I think it's too late. We've got the word shamanism and we can no more give it back that we could give back bungalow or jodhpurs
So what got you onto the path of spirituality then, Suzi? What brought you here? As I mean the path in this lifetime. I know we're spiritual beings and before this lifetime, but for this lifetime, what got you onto the spiritual path which brings you here in the now?
For this lifetime, that's a many occasions answer, if you like. So in one way, I seemed to literally come into this world with kind of, as somebody put it, through my bones in the same way that rocks got Brighton written through it. And that there's never, for example, when I arrived at primary school, within a couple of weeks, I'd acquired the nickname Witch, and the same happened everywhere I went. So I think I came in very much with a different sensibility to the common cultural way of being. As a child, I was insistent that I could speak to trees, hear the rivers, see fairies. It took me years to realize that what I heard and saw in conversations between the human population was not what the majority of people heard and saw. So I was soundly thrashed pretty often as a child for spying, listening at keyholes, that sort of thing, because I wasn't supposed to know what I knew. And so in that way, I've kind of always been on the path because I've always been aware of spirits. I was also extraordinarily fortunate to be raised into a family where my great-grandmothers, both of them on my mother's side, were amazing seers. You know, there are loads and loads and loads of stories about my grandfather's mother in particular, about, you know, she's saved people's lives through her
beautiful
sudden seeings, and some of my grandfather's uncles, one of them was a healer, and there's all those kinds of stories. And then there's the kind of invitation, or actually less of an invitation and more of a series of sharp shoves from behind, in terms of the spirits going, you're gonna do this whether you like it or not, to kind of put myself forwards and go, okay, come and make a drum with me, or okay, I will create a healing ceremony for you.
Okay, so what year did you get into the shamanic healing? So did your training, so on and so forth? What year was that, and how long have you been doing the shamanic healing for?
So doing what is called shamanic healing, in the sense of Hana core shamanic healing, I've been doing probably for something like 15 years.
Okay.
But doing exactly the same thing, not realizing it was called shamanism, not having attended a training, more like 35 years.
Okay.
So I had the experience of having been working as a healer and just calling it energy healing, or not trying my best not to call it anything. And just, you know, I was very under the radar. I was very careful about who I said what to, having been, you know, raised with nicknames like witch. I really didn't want my children to be raised under the shadow of their mums. You know, very quiet about what I did. And then about 15 years ago, I heard of a training, and it was the practitioner training at the Sacred Trust, and I very much had that thing of, ooh, I have to do that. And so I went and did that, and realized that all these things that I'd been doing, and these ways that I thought I was engaged in quite a lonely way, and that, you know, I didn't realize there was people all over the world doing the exact same thing, and then there was a word for literally everything that I was doing. And that was really a beautiful moment to me, to realize that I belonged to a global community of people singing the very same song.
Beautiful. And could you name some of the types of the shamanic work then? Let's first talk about drumming. Tell us a bit about the shamanic drumming, and what's the purpose behind the shamanic drumming, or just drumming, so to say.
Okay, so shamanic drumming is drumming which takes place at a particular pulse rhythm. So the rhythm is, I believe, something like it goes between 4.7 and 7.2, I think, megahertz. So it's about 300 beats per minute. So the drum in some places in the world is called things like the shaman's horse or the magic carpet, because that beat changes the state of the human brain, and it takes us out of the alpha awake state and not down into sleep, but to the state that we pass through going in and out of sleep every day. And that's that visionary betwixt and between state from which we typically remember our dreams. And so connection with the other world is very much supported and encouraged by this drumming pulse. And on top of that, it's very clear, and again, it's one of the things that's said by peoples from all over the world, that the hides of the drum, I work in particular with deer hide, that the deer have, for generations upon generations upon generations, been delighted to carry what they consider to be the heartbeat of the earth in their hides by being made into drums once they no longer need that hide. And again, it's a partnership between the spirit of the deer, the spirit of the drum, and the spirit of the practitioner, and obviously the spirits themselves, that make this beautiful relationship and the thing that we call the journey possible.
Okay, beautiful. So yeah, I've experienced many drumming sessions before, and it's great that you say connecting to the heartbeat of the planet, because it does feel, when you go into that rhythm state, it feels for me that I'm connecting back to the mother's womb. I'm connecting back to the heartbeat. So it's very beautiful that the connection from the drumming is to the Earth Mother. So so you train for the drumming, don't you? You train people how to make the drums. So can you explain a little bit more about that, Suzi, please?
So I run drum making workshops where you come and make your own drum, and there the invitation is to really connect with calling into the spirit of your drum rather than just the spirit of the drum in general. And that's through the process of binding up the metal ring that holds the tension in the drum, and sanding and perhaps marking the wooden frame which you wrap the hide round, and then cutting out and banging the little holes in and cutting a ribbon to make the drum. That when we undertake that as a really sacred kind of craft activity, if you like, we're crafting home for a spirit with whom we are going to be in partnership when we journey and when we undertake ceremony. And through then the making of my drum rather than just a drum, you are already quite a way down the alleyway of having a really potent partnership between you and the drum. It's a lovely, lovely thing to do.
Beautiful. And so how do you get yourself ready spiritually before you do the drumming journey? Or is there any particular protocol you go about just so you can get more into the sacred space and more into the shamanic process?
Do you mean before I run a drum making workshop? Or
yes. Just in general. So you're about to say you're going out just to play the drum. How do you get yourself centered before you start playing the drum? Is there any ways? Do you protect yourself, so on and so forth?
I think I almost do the reverse to protect myself, actually. I become utterly vulnerable and completely open. So that if I was going, for example, to take my drum and sit in the woods today and drum, and maybe I was going to sing to the river or with the river or with a tree, then I would go there very much with a kind of attitude of what I'm doing is an offering, and I'm doing it as an offering of my love for you, for being what you are, as you know, the manifestation of spirit as this oak or as this water. And so my first direction, if you like, in that offering is one of utter gratitude for the insane beauty that is that, and that spirit has chosen to be that and allowed me to be here to be with that. And that then to really drop away from the, you know, bada of the human mind and into my animal body and into the ways in which body and soul and the overarching mind are simply an indivisibly interwoven part of creation, and to really let my kind of societally instructed individuation fall away and just become part of all that is.
Beautiful. So can you explain a little bit more about the directions then? You mentioned one of the directions. Can you just give a brief description and just synopsis of what the directions is when you're calling the directions?
So for me, the directions are a temple, if you like. They are a wise, compassionate, utterly loving, all-knowing group of spirits who are, I don't necessarily, well, I do a bit identify them with being like one's in the north, one's in the east, etc. But they are, I feel them more accurately through the description before me, behind me, above me, below me, to my right, to my left, within. And that in that context, each one of these directions has a spirit who is willing to come and work with me and be with me in the temple for whatever reason that temple is called. So, for example, within healing ceremony, and that they are identified with the north, the south, the east, the west, the above, the below, the within, but there's not a but.
So talking about the shamanic work, and let's talk about the inner work in spirituality. And can you recommend to people out there who are new to all of this wording, shamanic, witch, so on and so forth, why is it needed for us to be able to do this work? Why do we have to do the inner work? Why is it so important for the world at this time?
Gosh, because there has never been a time, perhaps, when humans have been in their behavior so separate from the truth of their reality, and that this work that we're calling shamanism is completely dependent upon the knowing and understanding that everything is made up of the same stuff, everything is contained of and contained in spirit, and everything is interwoven, and that humans at the moment, or not humans, the Western acquisitive culture is behaving in a way that would suggest that it's completely forgotten that it depends on Earth for everything. That we're not separate for Earth. That if we poison all the water, there's not something else for us to drink. If we poison the air, there's not another place for us to go and breathe. Et cetera, et cetera. And that's so. We have to start paying attention to these truths, which, we've now got access to it as a culture under the name of shamanism, but these are core truths which every society has known, and many still do, but ours has forgotten. Yeah.
Beautiful. So talking about the world, what's your perspective on the virus at the moment? Is there anything positive to come from the virus? What's your perspective on the virus, so to say?
I think there are many, many positive things to come from the virus. Obviously there are many negative things to come from the virus, and by saying there are positive things, I am in no way negating the very real pain and misery suffered by those who might have it or those who've lost loved ones to it. It's heartbreaking, and I'm never in any way suggesting that as individuals we have or have not a kind of hierarchical place in the learning, as it were. I'm not putting that very well, but I hope you see what I mean.
Yeah, of course.
But I think that the benefits of it are extraordinary. I mean, people have been crying out for us to please, stop all the airplanes, you're killing our sky. Stop the big boats, you're killing our ocean. And governments around the world. Sorry?
I've not seen so many planes out until today. I saw quite a few planes and leaving a bit of spray. But it seems like it's cleared up with all the lockdown. There seems to be a lot less going on. But today is a day where I looked out and I'm like, it's kind of going back to not normal, so to say, but there's a lot more activity up there.
What a shame. I mean, that has been such a benefit that government was saying, oh, no, we can't do that. And then we did it. So as much as anything else, I think quite aside from the benefits that, there's supposedly you can see the sky over China. For example, the benefits for the earth, the whole body of the earth are clearly many. But also, I think the benefit to us to see how powerful we really are. And that when government sits there and says, oh, we can't do that, that's not the truth. They can. And that big business, which seems to me to be the kind of puppeteer in this show, shouldn't be allowed to destroy our world. And it is clear that it doesn't have to. Our elected representatives can act in a powerful way. They just did, globally. Yeah.
And going back to as well, another few positives which I've noticed is a lot of people will be able to do more inner work with themselves. So a lot of people are so entwined with the 9 to 5, 40-hour, 50-hour week job. So they'll actually have time to be able to slow their energy, be able to actually say, right, how am I feeling? Instead, it seems like we're going 100 miles an hour before this virus came. And it seems, obviously, there's negative, and I'm sorry if anybody's lost any loved ones, and it's very sad that. But we're looking at the positives here, and there are a lot of positives to come from it. It's helped me do a lot of my inner work and look really deeply at my shadow, my unhealed parts. So let's go on to those who are struggling, Suzi. What would you recommend for them listening in this moment, who are struggling, finding it hard to be by themselves, be with family, so on and so forth?
Gosh, so tricky. I guess my what I would say would depend on where you are. If you've got any access at all to the wild, even if it is to look out of your window at the stars or the birds, or hopefully you have sight of some kind of green, connect with it and remember that not only do we love her, she loves us, that all of that interwoven beauty of the natural world of which we are a part is, you know, a great big singing song of love. And that to try and feel not only the love outwards but the love back. And that if you're alone, then please reach out. Please let's, as a society, get past the place where we feel that it's not okay to be seen to be vulnerable. I think, again, if COVID-19's taught us anything, let it be how much we need each other, how much we love each other, how important community is, how much an actual geographical community can stand up and support the people in it, even if they didn't really know each other before. There's been some really beautiful things happening, certainly here in Devon, with, you know, neighbours supporting one another and doing the shopping and calling through windows to one another and all that. And that's, I think, I really do genuinely feel that that's available to pretty much anyone if they ask for it. And people don't know if we don't ask.
And it's absolutely fine. The last few years, it's like been a big vulnerability lesson for myself. Like maybe 5 years ago, there was a lot of stuff I wasn't expressing my true feelings. There was a lot of stuff connected to my childhood. So with me doing this show, it's really helping me to be able to talk more and express. And vulnerability, know it as a beautiful thing. We are all vulnerable at times, and know it's okay. And it's okay to speak. And that sometimes we do get vulnerable. Over the last few years, I've been thinking vulnerability was something I cannot have in my frequency. I was kind of moving away from it. But the more I've got in touch with it and the more I've made peace of it and understood, I can speak to people about my problems. Everyone is not perfect. We all have problems. And speaking is so important, like Suzi said, talking just to your family or friends. And if you don't have family and friends, finding someone who will listen to you, because talking is so important, even for those who don't really talk much. Find time, record yourself and talk to yourself. So it's great to be able to do this journey and speak to Suzi, and obviously have more of myself talking, because my dad, from my father, he didn't really talk much. My mum talked a little bit. So I've always grown up not talking about my feelings or anything like that. So it's been a big unwind for me, this process in the last few years of being and knowing that vulnerability is okay, and it's okay to speak to people, and there's no harm in that. So is there any advice as well? Any other advice you'd give, Suzi, for people who are dealing with vulnerability at this time?
I really like your idea of recording yourself. I hadn't thought of that before. And I wonder if we recorded ourselves and then watched that recording, would we be able to step out of critic and judge, which is where we tend to sit, and instead see for a moment ourselves as other and respond as if we were someone else? There's almost no one out there who wouldn't go, oh, I'll listen to you, you know, let me help you, let me, do you know what I mean? And to be able to do that for ourselves might be amazing. That hadn't occurred to me as a thing to do. But I mean, the main thing is to that one, the critic, the judge, the one who says you've got to be perfect now. It's such a powerful thing to do, to be able to go, you sit down, be quiet, go and sit in the corner. I don't want to hear from you anymore. you know?
Yeah,
and then to be able to say to ourselves, it's okay. We're not supposed to be perfect. This is a grand adventure. It's an experiment. And if we really are here to be perfect, why is it that everyone is having this extraordinary adventure of getting it wrong day after day after day after day, whatever it is? And that this notion of perfection is something which we only ever seem to view in other people. You know, I really don't think even the most arrogant amongst us ever sits there in front of the mirror going, oh yes, I've got it right again. You know, it just doesn't happen.
No.
And
so I've recorded myself. So at the moment I record myself on a night. I do a voice recording. So I talk about the day and talk about what's going on. So in my future self, when I look back, I can see how far I've come, because for myself, I do need personal victory to know how I've come a long way. Say if we go back 3 or 4 years ago, I was doing quite a few events. We had a lot of people come into these events, but I was so bothered about being perfect. I was so bothered about spirituality, and my family life was unbalanced and my friendship was unbalanced. And it got to the point where I had not a breakdown, but I had a reality crash where I was like, right, I need to relax. I need to let go of control, because I had this control in me from my father side, all sorts of different things. So I had that within me, and I just surrendered to the entire universe and said, right, it's okay to be vulnerable. I can talk about my feelings now. There was a moment and death process I went through where I felt like I died and I was reborn in the moment, and I'm still going through this process. So for everyone out there, recording yourself is great because it empowers you as well to hear your own frequency and hear your own voice, and you can navigate how you were last year to the year before. Because I look back in videos of me a few years ago, I'm like, who's that guy? I'm like listening to myself, like, who is this guy? Like, it's so nice to have there in front of you. Kind of, it's a bit like exactly like a journal, but a voice type journal. And it's really helped me overcome a lot of things, and to know I'm not perfect, and it's fine to be not perfect. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Well said.
Thank you. How has this affected your business then, Suzi, for your clients? Are you doing things online or?
Yeah. Amazingly, actually, thank everyone who's ordered a drum and every spirit ever. I've had enough drum orders, which has always been an online thing for me. You know, my website's got pictures of drums and instructions on how you can go about ordering a drum from me, and so we still have and food on our table thanks to the kind and wonderful people who've chosen to take this moment to order a drum. Obviously, healing ceremonies have had to become distant, and not everyone's up for that. And I run 2 9-month-long, kind of year-long trainings each year, and the first of each of those has had to go online, which I must say I really struggled with. I mean, I'm a bit of a technophobe, and if things can go wrong, it probably will, and I'm there kind of like an idiot just going, I don't know which button to press. And so the thought of running things online to me was terrifying, and the spirits were very much going, you will, this is the best, this is the generous thing to do, this is the beautiful thing to do, this is the thing that is integral with wholeness to do. And I kept just going like, are you sure, this is the internet. And then when I actually did some, it's amazing how connected you can be, which is, I'm still a little ashamed that I say such a thing, because I know we all collect outside of physical reality. Of course, that's where every piece of healing work takes place, is in the other world, in non-ordinary reality first. And so why shouldn't it be possible to connect really deeply and beautifully as individuals or as a group over the extraordinary medium that is something like of course it's possible, but it seemed that it would be hard to me, and I was very surprised by how easy it was and how well it went. Yeah,
it really helps us as well become more aware of our dimension stuff, and realizing that we can work on different realities and not just confined into this reality, the 3D or the 4D, the 5D. So it's great to give us a perspective of that we can connect, even though you are the other side of England, we can connect with each other and hold this frequency and share space. So it's great to be able to do that and understand that through more internet, more conversations, a lot more people doing internet stuff now, which is great to see. So it's really helped my business as well. And for all out there who have businesses, I'd really recommend getting online and just talking. It is nerve-wracking. The first few shows were nerve-wracking for me. I almost couldn't speak at the first show. I was like, right, shit, what do I say? I've got all my stuff in front of me. It's just, we make mistakes, and it's just about navigating, forgiving ourselves important as well. If you do make a mistake, forgive yourself in the moment and just move on and just co-create with the forgiveness and so on and so forth. So can you tell us a little bit about more about your business, and Suzi? It's Dartmoor Drums.
I've kind of, actually, to be honest, I've slightly abandoned being called Dartmoor Drums, and my website is now just called SuziCrockford.com. It seemed much easier to have everything under the same heading, and if I used my name, then there was going to be no mystery as to who and where you might find me. So the website is I guess mostly devoted to the creation of drums and rattles, but I also offer a 9-month Shamanic apprenticeship, which has then there's an ongoing group, so you can continue to apprentice me for as long as you like. And obviously I offer healing ceremonies, and I'm always willing to make something that isn't a drum or a rattle as well. I'm very up for whatever beautiful and wild creation somebody feels they would like to have made for them.
Beautiful. I've had a few rattles from you in the past. I've had 4 rattles altogether I've had off you, and I'll be definitely getting, they're absolutely beautiful. I've got 2, I'll just grab 2 of them, which I've still got on my space. So while we're getting this, so explain a bit more about the rattle. So this is one of Suzi's rattles. Here we go, the rat tap tap. So there they are. Beautiful here. So this was deer hide, was it, Suzi, this one?
That's deer hide, yeah. And that one of them looks like you need to slightly glue the
yeah, it's coming apart.
The wrap. Well, actually, they both are. Oh my god, shame on Baker.
I think I've actually sent them back for you to repair a few separate ones before, haven't I?
Yeah, okay. More glue needed, clearly.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I've forgotten your question. I'm completely distracted.
So let's talk about the rattles. What's the meaning behind the rattles and the purpose of the rattles, then, Suzi? And tell us a bit more about the rattles.
So to me, rattles are an amazing way of shaking up energy. So I perceive them as they're like the great disruptor, in that you can use them in ceremony, both in healing and in other kinds of ceremony, for a number of purposes. For me, the kind of most obvious one of which is kind of akin to going, hey, wake up, this is what's happening. And that on a kind of at the other end of their purpose, so it kind of depends how you use them. And as with everything, intention is totally crucial and key. So, on the one hand, they can be used as the disruptor, the awakener, the one that goes, pay attention. And on the other hand, because a rattle is such an exquisitely portable thing compared to the majority of drums, if you use a rattle in the same way that you use the drum, you can, take your capacity to be on that magic carpet of that pulse with you, not exactly in your pocket, because I don't suppose that the rattle would survive that, but certainly in your bag. And that both the rattle and the drum are, because they are ceremonial tools that we all at quite a basic level, I guess partly through cultural kind of inculcation, I think almost everyone's familiar with the vision of the healer with their drum or their rattle or whatever. Also the frequency of them, the ancientness of them, our great connection to the mind of all people, says that these things are amazing at creating ceremony. And so there's a connection which is hardwired into our DNA, if you like, that says, I will be more able to speak with the spirits. I will be more able to hear the spirits if I have with me these tools.
Yeah, it's really helped
fundamental.
It's really helped me clear away a lot of the brain noise before going into ceremonies and getting myself centered. If I'd rattle for, say, a few minutes around my energy field, it helped me remove any brain noise or any distraction. So when I do a ceremony or a meditation with a group, before I make sure I'm rattling for about 10 minutes by myself, just rattling around my aura, just so I can kick the brain noise out. Because when I start a ceremony, I do have those self-defeating programs which come into me, the doubt. So the rattle for me helps me clear away this from my mind and be able to enter more of my heart. So from my own personal experience, a rattle is so important, and it's brought me on to different journeys, deeper journeys, and it's really helped me go into my own space, go into my own heart and feel my heart before I go into a ceremony, instead of everything going in and all the brain noise and you're like, shit, there's loads of people around me, I've got to do this. As soon as I start going with the rattle and feeling the rhythm of the rattle, I then go into my heart and I'm able to be myself. So it's a great tool of, like you say, Suzi, clearing the brain noise.
Great.
Beautiful. And so let's talk about your shamanic healing as well. So the sessions, tell us a bit more about those and what happens during these.
So shamanic healing takes as its premise, if you like, that everything is connected, everything is made up of the same stuff, everything is contained of and contained in spirit and interwoven, and that therefore you, me, the tree, the river, the laptop are made up of the same stuff and yet clearly completely different. So shamanism and actually science says, okay, what makes that same stuff different is the dance it's doing. How fast is it vibrating? What steps is it doing? What tune is it playing? And each of us has a totally unique tune in the universe, the one song. So just to now completely change metaphors, we are therefore a totally unique thread in the warp and weft of life. But what shamanic healing says is that although we are this utterly unique thread, this completely unique song, we are singing with the choir of life. We are part of the warp and the weft, the fabric of life. And that energy can move because it's all the same. Energy can move. And so sometimes energy moves out of our sphere that belongs to us. And that particularly happens when we suffer what we call trauma. So when we do things like, I jumped out of my skin, I got beside myself with rage, even in our crazy kind of, we've almost forgotten we've got soul culture, we've still got these expressions that say, I've remembered that I can get away from myself. And that in a culture where wisdom is passed from mouth to ear, and we know that when something happens, we get away from ourselves, that's seen as an intelligent thing for us to do. That's a good idea, because the bit that's over there is going, la, 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 it's a lovely day. Oh my goodness, look at the spider's web or whatever it is. Yeah. And then when we remember to pull ourselves back together again, we say things like, I'm feeling really scattered. I'm feeling disempowered. I don't feel connected. Whatever. We know, oh yes, I jumped out of my skin. I've got to pull myself home. And so in a wise society, that bit comes home and it goes, hey, that was awful. Maybe have some brandy with that tea or whatever, you know, do the self-care thing, sit down, have a rest, read a book, go to sleep, go and lie with the daisies, whatever it is. But in our culture, we have completely forgotten this. We've can barely manage to acknowledge that we've got a soul, never mind that soul is dancing with all of the rest of life. And that when, therefore, a bit of us steps out, we tend to go, oh, no, I'm a bit broken. Now I'm going to carry on. And even though my breakage might be emotional or you know, something other than physical, I'm still going to have the equivalent of a limp, but it's going to be an emotional or psychological sort of unwellness. Yeah. And so we don't call ourselves back. And then because we live in this extraordinary world where everything is connected, everything is made up of the same stuff, if a bit of us that's doing the exactly right dance is over there, out, not perfectly in alignment, then, excuse me, some other bit of energy will come and take its place because there can't be a void. Yeah. And so we've got the double whammy then of I don't have all of my energy, oh, and now I have to carry baggage. Now I'm carrying around this other energy that's I can't use because it's not mine. And so we do become ill. So from the very simplest origins of illness, which is I feel disassociated potentially from myself, from my community, from my tribe, from my territory, to maybe addictive behaviors, depression, actual physical illness, you know, it goes on and on and on. The ways in which that imbalance in us, I don't have all my power and I've got to carry around this thing that doesn't belong to me. So what shamanic healing does is in communion, well, actually the spirits facilitated by the will and the intention of the shamanic healer come and they take away what does not belong to that person and they return the connection to what does belong. And so they then therefore restore that capacity to sing my one song within the universe, be that exactly this thread that I'm supposed to be, in all the ways that I'm imperfect, in all the ways in which I'm going to fall down and get up and mess up and do whatever, but with my own power. And then the practitioner facilitates that. The practitioner facilitates the messages being passed between the spirit and the person wanting the healing. And fundamentally and most importantly, the practitioner also then is able to tell the person what is it that the spirits ask for in exchange for this work. So typically the practitioner and the person who's come for healing have some kind of arrangement. You know, the practitioner offers time, drumming, intention, a comfy, warm, beautiful space. In return for that, perhaps the person coming offers money or art or gardening or whatever it is. But the spirits, they take what does not belong and they return it to the availability that it can be where it does belong. They bring back our power. They bring back myself to me. And in return for that, they want our acknowledgement and acceptance that that is the case. So almost the fundamentally most important part of what takes place between the shamanic practitioner and the person who's come for ceremony is the transmission of that homework. So they've done this. They've taken away what doesn't belong. They've brought back what does belong. And they want you to go and thank a tree for the gift of your life, or build a cairn for your ancestors, or create a piece of art for your power animal, or whatever it is. And that acceptance and acknowledgement and gratitude, hopefully, makes the thing that took place in non-ordinary reality real in this reality. I am now full of my own power. I am not carrying what does not belong to me.
Beautiful, beautiful. So if a client comes to see you, are you doing any hands-on healing, or what other things are you doing in this session? Are you using plant medicine, any herbs or sage or anything?
I use herbs to offer smoke to the spirits, yes. I use only herbs native to here, and
Beautiful.
pretty much exclusively herbs native to about 4 foot outside my own front window, where I grow a herb garden and dry my own herbs. So specifically I use our native British sage, rosemary, mugwort a lot, and a few other things kind of as called to do so. I don't ingest any plant teachers, as they're known, at all. It's not my path. And I so mostly a ceremony here looks like drumming and rattling, and not much else.
Beautiful. So what's your view on ancestral healing, and why is this important in the world today?
Gosh, my view on ancestral healing is that it is fun. We are the circle sitting nearest the fire, and we are here only because of our ancestors. So every fiber of blood and bone, every piece of our body and our mind and our connection to mind is handed to us by those ancestors. And shamanism's been saying for its 70, 100,000 years or whatever, that thing that scientists discovered in, I think it was only 2018 maybe, that our traumas actually affect our DNA. I don't know if you heard about the research that they did, to do with the Holocaust survivors.
I haven't heard of the research, but I've heard a lot of the DNA being affected, even through viruses or anything. The DNA can be affected and passed on to the future generations. So
so they I think it was the University of somewhere possibly in Palestine, I can't remember, but I might be misnaming that completely. Anyway, some scientists discovered that there were markers in the DNA of the descendants of Holocaust survivors that in particular made them very much more prone to depression. And that, so if what's happened to our ancestors is going to help co-create who and how we are, along with, the circumstances of our childhood, of our education, of our life, just in general, that is part of the story, obviously. But we arrive here with really particular tendencies and proclivities and things that can be very much seen as, oh, well, goodness, you like that bizarre combination of marmalade and cheddar exactly like your great grandmother kind of thing, or whatever it is. We inherit so much. And so in order to become the more beautiful versions of ourselves, so that we can make the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible, to coin a phrase, we need to be going back through our lineages to change that inheritance as best we can. So that's one reason why ancestral healing is important. The other is that we need the ancestors to be well and wise ancestors. So we need those ancestors to have been properly ancestralized. Just, the dead are not necessarily wise, compassionate, utterly loving, all-knowing beings. We, the living, have to ancestralize those dead in order to make them that back through the lineages. And then we will benefit from their wisdom, their knowledge, their compassion, their love. So it's incredibly important.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I do a lot of ancestral work. What's brought me into the shamanic side was I was drawn straight away when it talked about ancestral healing. Myself, I give offerings to the land. I make soups for the land and make certain things for the land. So in my past, I've boiled up rice in the soup and my love, and I've gone out into the back garden. I've poured it into each part of the garden because I do believe that places can have ancestral karma and ancestral unbalanced energies. So I do believe we as people can manifest and clear and balance these energies if we choose to. I'm not saying we're going to change the world, but everyone's starting in their own space, in their own home, and acknowledging the land and acknowledging we are living with the ancestors. Just because we can't see them, they're in the unseen world, they are with us, they are guiding us, working with us. Ancestral healing really touches my heart, and it's something, once I heard about it, I was almost welling up of tears, because it brought a lot of, because I was on the path of, say, angelic stuff, looking into angels, and there seems to be, I don't know about you, but there seems to be a lot of disconnection from the ancestors on the planet, even in the spirituality community. There's a lot of, everything's focused on other things, and the ancestral healing, from my perspective, kind of sometimes goes on the back, and it's not really shown much throughout the world. And shown throughout the world, China used to actually, I think they still do it now once a year, where they actually dig out the bones of the ancestors and polish them as like a marking point, a dedication and a thanks to the ancestors. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I think there are around the world, certainly in the indigenous cultures, there is, as far as I understand it, there is no indigenous culture that doesn't honor their ancestors.
Yeah.
It's part of fundamentally connecting with what we really are. But I think in the West, you're right, there's a lot of kind of obfuscation of the ancestors. And I think that goes right back to that thing we were talking about that one that says we've got to be perfect. In that, our ancestors have messed up, and they were imperfect people. And therefore the idea that they could become well and wise ancestors is kind of quite far from how we think of the people of the past. So I think there's quite a misunderstanding perhaps in our culture about what we mean when we talk about the ancestors, rather than maybe
the global narrative.
My ancestors. And also just you saying there, to do this work, maybe you won't change the world, but maybe you will. There's a lovely saying that goes something along the lines of, anyone who doesn't believe that one being can make a difference has clearly never spent the night in bed with a flea.
That's great. That's really that's really, really good.
Glad you like it.
Yeah, I love it. I'll be sharing that one. So there's many different cultures. I was talking about regarding the ancestral energies not being brought up as much in the spiritual, not the traditions, in the kind of the online spiritual sense of marketing. It's very beautiful when we do see these practices out there teaching about ancestral healing and ancestral care. I've had firsthand. I've got a stepson who's he was basically born into a lineage who had karma from his father and his father, where they did negative things towards the land. So it does get passed down through generation to generation. And from my own perspective, we always come in with, say, negative karma. And once we do these offerings and once we do these prayers to the lands, we kind of balance and be in union with the land again. So I really recommend this ancestral offerings is a great way for you to be able to actually feel the ancestors within you and make them a soup, or even it doesn't have to be a soup, a bit of tobacco, or make them some cake or anything, or create some alcohol. Alcohol is a good one. Is creating some wine, just not for drinking, just for the process of honouring the ancestors. And talking more about the ancestors. Anything you want to add on to that, Suzi? Any more layers?
I think a really beautiful place to begin to feel into the ancestors is through gratitude for the gift of your own body, because that it's a no-brainer, isn't it? I am who I am. I look the way I do because of the people who gave me life. And that even if to look directly at the ones, my mom and dad, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, wherever, maybe those people aren't such nice people. Maybe we don't want to look at them and go, thank you for the gift of my life.
Yeah.
But that to know that back along maybe you have to go back hundreds of years in some people's family lines, bless them. Maybe, but that you will get to a point where your ancestors are well and wise, and they are beautiful, wholesome, wise, compassionate, loving people who understand that they are indivisibly interwoven with this land and wish no harm. And that to connect with gratitude for those ones, because all of us are only standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before.
Yeah, and beautiful. Yeah, I had I did some. We've had it before where we've done a drumming ceremony and in Harrogate at the Wellbeing Centre once, and we've had it. The ancestors actually coming and we've heard them start singing with us. So it's beautiful. If you find it hard to communicate with them, I wrote them a letter and I wrote a letter to my spirit guides and I asked them, how can I communicate to you? Are you going to communicate to me through vision, sound, television, so on and so forth? So it's so true that we just have to give gratitude for ourselves and understand the lineage and understand that it has happened where we have passed on negative shit. Our ancestors have, because they've not been shown the way. Their father didn't show them the human handbook and give them the teaching of the land and how to be spiritual and how to be balanced, so on and so forth. So going from ancestral healing, Suzi, to ceremony, can you explain a bit what ceremony means and why it's so important, and combining the ancestral energy and the ceremony together?
So to me, ceremony is the way we behave when it is our intention to commune with the sacred. So anything can be a ceremony. You're talking about making a soup. So making a soup is something which is a perfectly ordinary activity in the lives of many. And obviously there are some days when you knock up a soup, you're hungry, you want soup, it's just done. And then there are other days when making a soup becomes an exquisite ceremony. And therefore that what you're doing is potentially a perfectly ordinary activity, but in a sacred manner. So you're doing it with gratitude, with acknowledgement, with love for the more than human world, the unseen world, the spirits, the ancestors, the living world, all of it. But it's all about intention. And ceremony doesn't have to be, as you clearly know, it doesn't have to be getting dressed up in fancy robes and saying mysterious words and any of that. Ceremony is underpinned fundamentally by intention. And when that intention is really powerful and when that intention is in connection with the spirits, then more often than not, we movements, gestures, things to undertake which might seem more overtly what we might sort of perceive as ceremonial. So, maybe we might do something like the casting of a circle, or maybe we might inscribe particular shapes, but only if they have a really personal meaning to us. They, if you're going to do an action in a ceremony, it has to have meaning.
Yeah.
And so, even if you're doing that, you've got to know, who am I thanking? And why am I thanking them? So to me, the importance of ceremony is that it is that acts undertaken deliberately in service to spirit, in service to the greater good, in service to the gods, to the divine. And so, yes, of course, it's incredibly important.
And moving over to the fire ceremonies, can you explain a bit about working with fire and why that's important for us to be able to work with the fire essence and the energy?
So fire is possibly our most ancient ally, clearly been around since well before Eve ate the apple. And fire's got that exquisite polarity of, on the one hand, Kali, the total destroyer. Whatever you put in the way of fire, what comes after is ashes. There will be nothing left. And on the other hand, at the sort of other end, if you like, of that polarity is, if you light a fire or a candle, like little moths to the flame, humans will gather around it and they will immediately feel themselves to be in community. Fire's got this exquisite capacity to bring us together and make us feel like we're doing something around the fire, as long as it's not clothes or your house or something, and it has this I can't think of another word for it, but kind of polar capacity destroy, and therefore also to help us destroy. So we can offer to the spirit of the fire, for example, those things I no longer wish to do. So if I know that I've been consistently critical or I don't know, whatever, the innumerable ways in which any of us is a bastard in any given week, I can try and surrender those things to the fire and say, please, in my words, sacred fire, grandfather fire, take from me this. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm giving it to you. Help me burn it out of me. And on the other hand, also, that by bringing offerings to the fire, so maybe by whittling an exquisite stick as here is a piece of beauty that I've made as an offering of love and gratitude to you for all the millions of ways in which you are a good thing in my life. So, you keep me warm, you give me light, you cook my dinner. You are the closest thing we've got to a kind of way of embodying the sun and all the energy of life in a flickering, warm, beautiful way. And that then also that we can offer our intentions for what we create into fire in exactly the same way. And that because it's an elemental, that it's mind-bogglingly powerful. And that when we approach it with humility and gratitude and clear intention, it will help us.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I've had fire ceremonies before where, like you say, talking to the fire was very important. To set a frequency where I had troubles, like you said, I talked my story, and there's a gentleman, Andrew Bartis, who talks about a process called talking to the fire and telling your story to the fire. And it's basically where you try and remember the first memory when you were a younger child, and you slowly, it may take hours and hours, create a sacred space, and you go back to the earliest memories you have as a child. And I've done this, and I was in tears and I had a lot of anger and loads of different things brought up. And it was beautiful because the fire was there as a medium and using the elemental force to be able to exchange and remove the crap and the burn. From a personal experience, the fire is very good at helping you, like you say, talk to, release, give your burdens away to the fire and connect to it on that level.
Fire is also, it's one of our kind of universal and clearly presenting spirit. Fire and smoke are, used worldwide as a way of going, here are the spirits.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love fire. And my son loves fire as well. He's been nicking my matches and trying to... As soon as he sees me upstairs and sees I've light a candle, is, like you say, like moths to a flame. So before we go, Suzi, let's just have a quick briefing of animal totem. What's your perspective on working with animal totems, and why are the animal spirits so important in our lives today?
My theory on that one is that as humans who live in a culture which has broken our feeling of brotherhood and sisterhood, not just with all of the rest of life, but with each other.
Yeah.
I believe that your average Westerner, which is what we're talking about really when we're naming humans in this discourse, is that we're way more likely to trust an animal than we are a human. So if in a And that, especially if it's an animal that we love, if a loping great silver wolf comes wandering up to you from the other world, you're likely to go kind of, oh, hello. Whereas if a person comes wandering up to you, you're much more likely to go, oh, who are you?
What do you
not
want?
Sure if I like or trust you. So in terms of how we receive visions of the spirits, animals is genius, because we're so much more likely to go, wisdom, beauty, love, power, when we look at an animal than when we look at a spirit in another form. So that's number one. But secondly, also, we have so many stories about animals. Each one of us, even people who've, never been read a fairy tale, have stories about what animals are. And therefore, because we are such a storied creature, we make meaning, and we make animals mean something. So if we are asking for protection from the spirits and, a jaguar turns up, we feel protected. Our story around jaguar is, whoa, those guys have sharp claws. They're mean. He's going to protect me. Whereas if the spirit turned up as a kind of, unembodied, potentially formless, no thing, it would be so hard for us to feel protected. So to me, the main part of the metaphor of spirit animals is that's it. It's a metaphor, and it's a metaphor that works for us.
Beautiful. And can you talk about the connection between life lessons and animals? If there's any specific animals which bring a lesson, or their style, or the way they are, what lesson does it give to the humans? So say if we had the jaguar, like you were saying, the strength, and the wolf, so on and so forth, is there a connection between us seeing these spirit animals and taking medicine, taking lessons from them to work within our life?
Yeah, totally. But I don't believe that those are universal. Okay. So I believe that we have our own quite personal, in some cases, kind of lexicon of meaning between us and the spirits. And that, one man's fierce protector is another man's snuggly companion. And that we have to be very, very careful as receivers of metaphor to never give our authority away in this context. And so that if, dragons are a really obvious one. To one half of the population, dragons are dirty, gold hoarding that need to be dispatched by a handy knight, and to the other half of society, dragons are the most exquisite, raw, powerful expression of the aliveness of the earth, and all kinds of aspects within earth, and should be adored, honored, and offered golden virgins. And that you can't go to a book and be told, oh, it's a good thing, oh, it's a bad thing. You have to really listen to your own heart and to, was it the dragon slayer or the dragon server? And I think the kind of societal overlay of particular meanings for particular things is dodgy ground. It's thin ice. We must take our own authority. We must, because they don't necessarily mean the same to me, whoever I am, as they do to everyone. And the spirits they know me. My spirit's talking to me. They know every dream I've ever dreamt, every word I've ever spoken, every book I've ever read, every film I've ever watched. They will be absolutely artisan, handcrafting experiences, my seeings for me. So only I can truly divine what they mean.
Okay, beautiful. So everything's kind of tailor-made, and everyone's a signature frequency, and everyone's so different to everyone else.
So different, and yet so completely part of a whole.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you, Suzi. That was absolutely outstanding. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. And can you tell everyone out there how they can get hold of you?
Thank you so much for asking me to be here. It's been fun. I will have to say I was very nervous at first, but it's been
I
fun.
was as well. It took me 15 minutes to be able to talk properly. I was like,
same. I think we were both talking very fast. Okay, how you get hold of me is www.Suzi, spelled Suzi, Crockford, spelled like an old croc and then forward across the river.com. And I'm on Facebook, Suzi Crockford. On Facebook as Suzi Crockford Drums and Rattles. Dartmoor Drums. God, I don't even know what I'm on Facebook as. Anyway, I'm out there on the interweb, and mostly if you Google Suzi with a Z-I Crockford, you will find your way to me.
Lovely. And we're going to post the link below, and there'll be pictures as well of you. If it's okay with you, I'll ask you after this. I was going to ask you after this of just what you're doing and a few pictures of your work. So it'll all be available for everyone to see on this YouTube. So thank you so much, Suzi. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'd like to thank everyone who is listening and all of those joining in this episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.